You will be amazed. Prime time interview with Derrick Hayes. Prime time. Biggest names in the game. Prime time. New names to love the same.
Ladies and gentlemen, like I tell you, each and every night, prime time. Some of you may look at it and think it's prime time, but it's prime time. See, the M is silent. See, sometimes in life, the things that are silent will quietly lead you to the bigger opportunities. I go by the name of Derrick Hayes, the Entertainer. Follow me on all social media platforms at Entertainer and even on Cash App. You see by the time I got dressed up tonight. But see, it's not every night that I talk to somebody from the great state of Vermont. It's not every day that I talk with somebody that's not only from Vermont, but they on Sirius XM radio. See, this is one of my wife's favorite stations. She's always on Sirius XM radio listening. So I got something else. She gonna listen to me tonight because I'm gonna say, hey, my man, Mr. Bob Alper's on there. See, hey, thank you for helping out with my relationship.
Oh, absolutely. It's my job.
Not only is he a rabbi, but he's a comedian. He goes by the name of Mr. Bob Alper. How you doing tonight?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Oh, man, it's a blessing, man. It's a blessing. That's why I put on my bow tie for you and I put on a dress shirt. Okay. You know, I said, hey, if anybody this great's coming, I got to look great.
Right.
And ladies and gentlemen, follow him on his website at www.bobalper.com. So tonight, through his name, Bob Alper, we're gonna ask him a few questions. We're gonna learn about his life, and he's gonna teach us about why his brand of comedy, his brand of humor, his styles of laughs is all over the world. The B in his name is for begin. How did you first get started in the world of comedy?
Well, I was a very funny toddler. As a kid, it was funny. And high school, I was the editor of the school paper, put out the first April Fool's edition. In college, it's cool. I wasn't that funny, but one of my classmates, by the way, fraternity brothers, was Robert Durst. You might have heard of him. He's the millionaire real estate tycoon in New York who killed his wife and killed his friend. Wow. Anyway, that's another story. But as a rabbi, I always use jokes and funny stories in my sermons in front of my congregations, which gave me now over 47 years experience performing in front of a hostile audience. So I did, I guess 12 years I had a congregation, Buffalo for 6 years, and Philadelphia for 8 years. And then I left congregational life. I had earned a doctorate. I was going to do counseling and life cycle events. And I saw this little tiny ad in the Jewish Weekly in Philadelphia where we were living at the time. It said, do you think you're funny? Yeah, I thought it was funny. It said, enter the Jewish Comic of the Year contest.
Wow.
So I wrote my 50 words. There were 100 entries, 50 semifinals. 13 of us had to do 5 minutes of stand-up at a comedy club. Now, preparing 5 minutes of stand-up was the most difficult thing I've ever had to do. Where am I going to find 5 minutes of material?
Right.
I practiced in front of our cat Dracula. He was not amused. I did the thing, and I came in third behind a chiropractor and a lawyer.
Wow.
But the thing is, one of the judges was also the hostess of the top-rated morning TV show in Philadelphia. She thought I should have won, and she was right. So she arranged for me to do a set at a comedy club, had the camera crews come down, film me, and had me on her show. And that's what sort of started this thing. Okay. And after about 3 years, I started doing clubs, guest sets, started doing little organizations, and built. And ultimately, it's become a 30-year full-time career.
Okay. The O is for original. How important is it for you to be authentic in what you do, on stage and all?
Well, first of all, my hook, being the world's only practicing clergyman doing stand-up comedy intentionally. And I'm the only rabbi full-time stand-up comic. So the originality that's important. The material that I use is also original. A lot of comedians, it's the same stuff, shop-worn stuff you'll hear. Yeah, I just moved from New York to LA. I just broke up with my girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. The same stuff, different packaging. With me, I can do material about conducting services, doing weddings, funerals, baby namings, living in Israel for a year, growing up as a Jewish kid in Providence, Rhode Island. Most of my stuff is totally original things and also even material about being my age. I start the show. I say, probably the oldest comedian you'll ever see now. I mean, it wasn't always like that. I was younger, but I say, the opening line is I say, I'm 75. It's not that bad. My hero is Harrison Ford, who's 77. He's making another movie. It's going to be called Indiana Jones and the Enlarged Prostate. And then I say, they're going to test market that title. If that title doesn't work, the backup title is Indiana Jones and the Reverse Mortgage. And then he's got another project set up. If, when they finish that, when that's a wrap, there was a movie, I don't know if you remember, The Fugitive.
Yeah, The Fugitive.
Yeah. Well, they're going to do a new episode in which Dr. Richard Kimball flees assisted living.
Oh, man, you hurt me, man, because hey, because my dad's getting up there, and my mom-in-law's getting up there. Hey, the B is for boundary. Now, lately we've seen comedians getting in trouble with different topics. Are there any topics that are out of bounds for you that you won't discuss in your routine?
Yeah, first of all, my routine, and I pride myself, it's 100% clean.
Okay.
It's the kind of material where I was doing a show in Saratoga Springs, New York, a couple of years ago, and in the front row there was a mother, a grandmother, and a 14-year-old boy. And the grandmother is wiping her eyes, the mother is laughing, and the 14-year-old was slapping his knees laughing. And I thought, I'm reaching all these people, and none of my material is offensive. I don't do anything that's controversial. Nothing dirty. I want people to walk out of my show saying he was really funny. I don't want them to walk out saying, well, I mean, that was really dirty and embarrassing, but I laughed. No, I want people to feel every single joke I do is funny. And so there are topics that I don't touch that will make people feel sad. I don't do anything about cancer, because people are dealing with that. Why do? I mean, not that there are jokes, but there's nothing that I do that people will feel is out of bounds.
Okay. All right. The ask for knowledge. Who are people in your life that have helped you along the way, help you become successful that you like to acknowledge?
My wife.
Yeah, I was she part of your bio. Tell us a little bit about what she does, because that was interesting.
Well, first of all, I always say I talk about her in my act. Well, let me say what happened today. Okay. Today, this morning, we had to be at the hospital at 6:45 this morning. She had a routine colonoscopy.
Okay, tell her business. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's that was happened today. The last time, and this is in my act, the last time she had a colonoscopy, about 5 years ago. I tell the story. I was in the hospital. It was late afternoon, and I was in the waiting room. There was one other man there who was watching television. It was kind of blaring. And I was off in the other end of the room by myself trying to read. A nurse walked in, and she said, "Mr. Albert?" I said, "Well, it's Alper." She said, "Well, your wife is ready. Let me take you up to a room." And we got up there. She said, "Did you want me to see if she's all set?" I said, "No, thank you. We've been married for 51 years." So I walked into the room, and there was Mrs. Albert. And she was not ready. So this is a true story. Now, nothing happened today. Today was pretty, routine. Yeah. Anyway, so she is always a sounding board. often when I think I have a joke, I'll try it out, and she'll go, in which case I'll say, I'm going to make that joke work. And sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. So she's one person. Other people, a comedy club owner in Philadelphia, gave me a chance to get up on stage and die, because that's what happens when you're starting out in comedy.
Oh,
yeah. And you die. I mean, I one night there was a small audience. I was supposed to do 15 minutes. After 10 minutes, I was just depleted, and I had nothing. The audience gave me nothing. And he was emceeing, and I'm walking off the stage, and he walked up, and as we passed each other, he shook my hand and looked at me and said in a low voice, "Now you know what polite applause is all about."
Yeah.
So he was important. I have a cousin named Ben Alper, and Ben is a comedy writer. He was wrote for Leno, wrote for Letterman. He's still writing. He's terrific, and he's done written a lot of material for me that I still use. And occasionally, he'll come up with something new, and I'll work it into the act. And then there's one other guy I want to mention. When I was just, I guess, a year or two into it, living in Philadelphia at the time, I found a list of comedy writers in some kind of comedy book. 200 writers. There was, I think, 2 of them in Philadelphia. And I called one of them, who lived a couple miles from me. I said, "You want to write for me?" He said, "Well, yeah." He writes for a couple of comedians, and he was a copywriter in an ad agency. But I told him the topics I was interested in. He would write 10 jokes. 7 weren't even worth playing with. I'd go to a performance and try out 2 or 3 of them. If one of them worked, I'd send him $10. And we did that for a few years. And he was good. I mean, 3 out of 10 is not bad.
In baseball, you're a Hall of Fame, 3 out of 10.
Right. Yeah. But he always dreamed of writing for Jay Leno. That was his goal. And one day, Leno was coming to perform in Philadelphia, the Valley Forge Music Fair. And Joe said, "Oh, Leno's going to come," but I could never get my stuff to him. I said, "Well, it just so happens I officiated the wedding of the guest relations coordinator at Valley Forge." And I called her. She said, "Yeah, tell Joe to drop off his material. I'll put it in Jay's dressing room." And at midnight, Joe gets a call. "Hello, Joe? Hi, it's Jay Leno. Yeah, I really like your stuff." And from that point, Joe began writing for Leno. Leno, he didn't have the Tonight Show then, but he'd say, "I'm going to be in Tallahassee. I need jokes about the Alabama football team." And Joe would write jokes. Well, to make a very long story short, Jay Leno got the Tonight Show. He hired Joe to write for him. Within a year, Joe and his family moved to California, and Joe spent 18 years as the head writer for the Tonight Show.
Hey, that's a beautiful story, and you opened the door. So.
Yeah. So,
man,
that's nice.
That's why I ask those stories, because you never know who's helped who's opened the door for who.
Exactly.
Yeah, the L is for laughs. Why is it important to laugh, and who makes you laugh, or what other comedians are inspire you?
Well, my God is Mel Brooks.
Okay.
As always, when I was even in high school, I discovered Mel Brooks, and he's always made me laugh more than any other human being alive. I just think of him and I brighten. Shelley Berman, Bob Newhart, they were my inspiration.
Yeah, Bob Newhart, he goes way back with me, back to the 70s.
Yeah. I used to memorize his routines and perform them for a Jewish youth group. And you know what? Bob Newhart's also a model for me, because I mean, the man's been married for over 50 years. He's a really decent man. And I think that's part of, I hope, what I give off, to be funny, but also he's a kind person and a decent guy. So he's been an inspiration. Somebody said to him, he's 83 or 84 now. Said, you're still going around doing stand-up? And he said, "Yeah, it's worth it to me to have to take my shoes off in the airport to be able to make people laugh." So he's my inspiration. Other contemporary comedians. Did you ever hear of Gary Gulman?
Yes, I heard of him.
I think he's outstanding. I've paid to see him twice.
Okay.
He's so clever. He's so smart. He's got a new HBO special called The Depression, about his fight with depression. It's a serious thing, stand-up comedy, but he weaves the two things. It's well worth seeing. Another favorite comedian is a personal friend of mine named Mohammed Amer. He's
Okay.
Palestinian. He's got a HBO special called The Vagabond.
Okay, he on one of the. I read about one of your tours that you toured with the Arab and Muslims. Is he
Right.
one of the tour? Which okay,
Yep. We did I don't know 70 or 80 shows together. I'll never work with him again because his star has risen, which is great.
that's a blessing.
He's on the show Rami on Hulu, and he's doing another special whenever we get back to doing comedy. But he's clever, he's funny, he's smart, and The Vagabond talks about being an immigrant to the United States. I mean, talks about tough topics in a very funny way, and he's charming, affable, and he's one of my favorites too.
Okay. The P is for products. We talked about it earlier. Let us know about some of the products that you have, like some of your books and your CDs, and
Okay.
let people know what y'all about.
You got an hour?
Hey.
Okay. All right. So here we go. And all everything's available at my website. I'm glad you showed the website. There it is. You can buy all this stuff. I've got 2 CDs. This is my first one. It's called Bob Alper, Rabbi Stand-Up Comic, Really.
Okay.
And this is my second one called Guaranteed Funny, 101 Totally Clean Jokes. And this is great. If you like to tell jokes, it's me telling jokes in front of an audience. I was listening to Pandora the other day, and I subscribe to Jewish comedians, and they did 20 minutes of this on Pandora. And I'm like, okay, this is not. They did like 15 jokes, 20 minutes worth of jokes. So these are my CDs, and I've got a DVD, which the light doesn't. What are you, a comedian? And this is one of the jokes I use in my act. I talk about how I was driving one day, and it was very cold. I was wearing this fur hat that I picked up in Russia, and I got pulled over for speeding. And whenever that happens, I do 3 things automatically. I pull over to the side of the road, find my registration, and place my clergy sign on the dashboard.
Right.
The policeman walked over to the car, looked at the clergy sign, looked at me and my hat, looked back at the clergy sign and said, "What are you, a comedian?" So, and then I've written a couple of books. These are serious books. There's some humor in it, but what they are, a total of about, between the 2 books, 78 small chapters. True stories, poignant. A lot of people find themselves needing tissues when they read them. But the first one,
Thanks.
it's called Life Doesn't Get Any Better Than This, The Holiness of Little Daily Dramas. And the second one is called Thanks, I Needed That, and Other Stories of the Spirit. And I was just talking to a young man who called me, the grandson of a friend of mine. He called about an hour ago, and I had written a story about his father, that's his grandfather, who was a colleague of mine. How one day we were having lunch, and it was the anniversary of D-Day, and his face darkened. He was older than I was, and he said he remembers 3 days after D-Day. He was a kid. He was in high school. He came home one day, and all the shades were pulled in his home. And he came into the house, and his father was sitting on the couch. The lights were out, and in his hand he was holding a telegram that said, "We regret to inform you that your son Norman Doties was killed on June 8th in the D-Day, in the Normandy invasion." And he said how that impacted him and always will. Anyway, that's a serious story about brotherly love and pain, So a lot of good stories.
You're showing your versatility though. You know, you can do the comedy, you can do the serious. You know, it getting you ready for the future. You know, your starring movie role. The E's for education. Tell us about. You know, I read about some of the things you've done with education. Tell us about where you went to school and how it's helped you in your journey so far.
Sure. Well, I went to grew up in Providence. Through high school. Then I went to Lehigh University.
Okay.
After Lehigh, I went up to seminary, and as I say in my act, at the seminary, I was able to squeeze a 5-year program into 6. I went to Israel for a year, and that wasn't part of the curriculum back then. So 6 years in seminary. Then I was ordained, and after I was in serving congregations for about, I guess, 8 years, I went to Princeton Theological Seminary for a doctoral program, and that took about 3 years. So those are my degrees. A doctoral degree. Have a D-Min. It's called Doctor of Ministry. Also have what's called a DD, which is Doctor of Divinity, and that's a degree that my seminary gives you if you spend 25 years in the rabbinate. Some of us say DD doesn't stand for Doctor of Divinity. It stands for didn't die. And if you didn't die, you get this degree. But so one is an earned doctorate, and the other is honorary. I always talk about at Princeton. You know, I love going there. Our class consisted of. What's that?
No, the Ivy League.
Yeah. Well, Princeton Seminary it's on the campus next to Princeton University. It's not part of the university, but it's a very prestigious Presbyterian school. And in our class, there were 8 ministers, 2 priests, and 1 rabbi. So I was the first rabbi ever to get a degree from Princeton Theological Seminary. And I'll never forget the first day of class. You know, we would meet in seminar fashion all days, Tuesdays for 2 years. And the first day, the director of the program, who was a very imposing man with a deep voice, the Reverend Dr. J. Randall Nichols, explained to us that he said, Presbyterians have no sense of humor. Well, okay, he's the professor. You know, I'm learning.
Right.
About 15 minutes into the first class, one of my classmates presented a case study of a woman in his congregation who was making his life absolutely miserable. At which point our teacher, the Reverend Dr. J. Randall Nichols, looked at him and said, yes, she's the kind of person that you want to kill her and then tell God she died.
That's deep.
So I think Presbyterians have a good sense of humor too.
Oh yeah, you got to. That's what life's all about. The last one, ours for rabbi. What made you want to be a rabbi, and how was that experience for you?
You know, it was not a divine calling as some clergy have. I didn't put my hand in a rock and say, I am a rabbi. No, for me, it was a very logical career choice. In my freshman year at Lehigh, we took an aptitude test. What would be a good career for us? And it was scored 1 to 50. In, I think, engineer, I scored -5. I broke the curve. I was so unsuited to be anything science because that's not me. But the highest career choice was funeral director, which is not that distant from being a rabbi. You know, they're very, very similar in some ways. Anyway, when I was a senior at Lehigh, I'd always thought of being a rabbi. My uncle was a rabbi. My parents were very active in our synagogue. I was president of our youth group. I loved being Jewish. And I knew I wanted to work with people. I was a sociology major. And my senior year, I applied to graduate schools of business administration and also seminary. And ultimately decided if I go to seminary and decide it's not for me, it's still worthwhile. If I go to business school and decide I want to be a rabbi, it's probably wasted a couple of years. So I went to the seminary, did not like the seminary, spent 6 years not liking it, but it was the means to an end, became a rabbi. And, you know, there are many things about serving as a rabbi that are difficult, but I found it a very rewarding, very satisfying career. And here's the thing, Derrick, I didn't leave being a rabbi. It took me a while to articulate this. there are many ways of being a rabbi: serving congregations, working in organizations, study, chaplaincies, all kinds of ways of being a rabbi. And I realized my rabbinate is making people laugh. That's it, making people laugh, because it brings them health, it lifts their spirits, it makes them feel good. And I love Maya Angelou. She has a great line. She says, people will forget what you say, they'll forget what you do, but they never forget how you make them feel. And my life is making people laugh. And in fact, the book, Thanks, I Needed That. Okay. The title of the book, Thanks, comes from, I had a show somewhere, I don't know where it was, checking into the hotel late at night. And the young desk clerk, I've got to show you my driver's license. I forgot. This is part of the buildup. I showed him my driver's license. This is my driver's license.
I like that. I like that.
There you go.
I like that.
So I showed him my driver's license, and he laughed. And they looked at me with this sad expression. He said, "I've had a really rough day. Thanks. I needed that." And you'd be amazed how many times I say something funny or do something or show my driver's license, and people say, "Thanks, I needed that." And people do. They need, especially now, my God, they need to be
Yes, sir.
laugh. So I always say that the most memorable moment of my entire career took place after a show when a woman who I knew was dying of cancer came up to me. She looked at me. She said, she said, for an hour and a half, I forgot I was sick. And can't get higher than that.
Yeah, that's a blessing. Before we go, can you tell us about, you wanted to mention about the quick laugh?
Yeah, I have a project. When this whole COVID business began, I wanted to reach out to people. And so I developed what I call Quick Laugh. It's an email that I send out every day at 10 o'clock in the morning with a snippet from my comedy routine. Like this morning, here's what went out this morning. It's me, it's live, it's a video. And I say, I was having dinner with my niece and her 4-year-old son at a restaurant. He had to go to the bathroom, so I took him. He went into the stall. I was out there by the sink waiting for him. And apparently they had one of these electric toilets with a blinking red light, because at a certain point I heard him say, Uncle Bob, these things take your picture.
Mm.
So that was today. Every day, I've been doing this since the end of March, and I've gotten such wonderful responses. One rabbi in Long Island, he wrote, this past week I had 5 funerals, 4 COVID related, and your quick laughs are what has kept me going. So if people want to get a quick laugh, they should sign up, go to my website. On my website, there's some video. There's also
for the quick laugh,
buy my stuff. But on the top right, there's a sign up thing. They put your email address in, and starting the next day, you'll get a quick laugh every day, and it'll cheer you up. But it's not long. You're not investing. I get stuff from people that say, watch this, and at 4 minutes, 27 seconds, it's funny. No, these are 30 seconds and you're done. But
right. Hey, I appreciate that, man, and it's a blessing to talk to you. And I would just want to say thanks. I needed that.
Okay.
That's how you end the week. When you worked all week, you interview different people. You get to talk to wisdom. I'm looking at wisdom, and I have a friend. I want to put him in touch with you because his name Kyle Neely, and he's starting out as a comic. He just moved to LA, so I like to put him in touch with you because you never know who can help who.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I remember when he first was starting out, nobody thought he was going to try and do it. And I said, man, look here, I'm not only going to support you, but I'm going to come out and videotape you.
Yeah.
So anybody that I can help, put him in touch with somebody,
right.
That's what we have to do. Because in life, sometimes me interviewing you might be for him to connect with you. So, because you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. So, thanks. Like I said, I needed that.
Can I mention one more thing? Got a second?
Oh yeah, yes, sir.
One more thing. I do another thing called the Laugh and Peace Tour. Been doing that since 2002, where I do shows with Muslim and Christian comedians. We've done, I don't know, maybe 800 shows. Every place, synagogues, mosques, churches, the World Bank, the Clinton Presidential Library. We've done it in England, Israel, and it's wonderful. It's not political. We've done tons and tons of colleges. And I work with a comedian now named Gibran Salim, who's a Pakistani family. He's American, Muslim. He's a liberal Muslim. He calls himself Muslim-ish. And I work with Reverend Susan Sparks, who's the senior pastor of the Madison Avenue Baptist Church in Manhattan. And we love working together. And it brings peace to communities. The most wonderful, one of the most wonderful moments, we did a show at Georgia Tech, and the backstage before the show, we were talking with the president of the Muslim Student Association and the Jewish group, the Hillel, and I overheard them planning where they were going to have dinner that night together afterwards. And then later on, they told us that before they began working on the Laugh and Peace Tour, even though their offices were next door to each other in the student union, they'd never spoken to one another.
Wow.
And now they're hanging out. That's what humor does, brings people together. When you laugh together, you can't hate each other.
Hey, there you go. Hey, you had the medicine,
Right.
that provides the miracle. You have anything else you'd like to share? Or
That's it. I wish everyone health and safety. Yes.
hey, I appreciate you. It's been a blessing, ladies and gentlemen, with Mr. Bob Alper. He's a rabbi. He's a comedian. Visit his website, www.bobalper.com. Today he talked about how he got started. Why is it important for him to be original? He talked about the boundaries that he's not going to cross. He talked about the acknowledgement of the people, from the writers to his wife to all the people that helped him in his career. He talked about why it's important for him to help people to laugh, because that's his rabbi. That's what makes him work. That's what makes things happen for him. He talked about his products. Go out and support him. He has books, CDs. Even go to his website and sign up for the Quick Laugh. He talked about how he got his degree from Princeton. And he talked about why he keeps doing what he's doing. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is a great edition of Prime Time, where we just telling stories to empower you. And the M is small, because in life, the smaller things will quietly lead you to the bigger opportunities. Follow me on all social media platforms at Entertainment, and even on Cash App. And just like Jay Sanford at Jay Sanford Music brought us in with the hook, I'm going to let him take us away. And until next time, we thank you for your time.
Time, you will be amazed. Prime time interview with Derrick Hayes. Prime time, biggest names in the game. Prime